I'm Alexi Lalas, and this is the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking about MLS coming down to the wire and all sorts of craziness that's going on over there. We'll have our European roundup. We'll talk VAR as usual. Zlatan, potentially in that conversation of the greatest ever. Greg Berhalter, that is, with the U.S. men's national team. NWSL, some Sofia Coppola talk, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Monday, October 26th in the year 2020?
I'm doing well, particularly after a very impressive start to the season for the Michigan Wolverines.
Your Wolverines of Michigan up there in God's country, if you will, they started off the Big Ten. The Big Ten kind of came back, right? This is happening. 9-game series, and then after that, they decide who the best team in the Big Ten. And when I say 10, it's not actually 10, right?
Correct.
How did your Wolverines do?
We thumped Minnesota 49-24. And Alexi, I don't like to overreact to one game, but we have an absolute star at the quarterback position, a kid by the name of Joe Milton, who I think is going to provide me with incredible amounts of joy on Saturdays over the next couple of years. He is a stud.
I've never heard of him. I trust you and take your word for it. But I will say this: when we talk about great teams, and when we talk, let's be honest. When we talk about great college football, the first thing that comes to mind for you and probably all of our listeners and viewers is Rutgers football. Rutgers is back, baby. Okay, we are back with a vengeance, and we are kicking butt, taking names. So don't sleep on my Rutgers Scarlet Knights when it comes to college football out there. They're doing really well. So yes, college football has been back, but in the form of Big Ten, it is back. So for you and my wife, who's a big Ohio State fan, and everybody else out there, and Stu Holden and the whole Holden family are big Ohio State fans. Everybody is happy that they at least get to see the actual game. We know that the environments aren't yet back the way that we want it. My friend, what have you watched this week other than your Michigan Wolverines, which are evidently going to win the Super Bowl? Not the Super Bowl. What do you call the thing in college? The big one, the four, right? The playoffs. I don't know.
Well, Alex Dowd just messaged us saying Stu Holden is a Clemson fan. And it is true. Stu is kind of torn there. I know his family is Ohio State Buckeyes, but he's a Clemson guy. So, and Ohio State and Clemson have actually met in some big games in recent years. So it's been a little bit difficult for him.
Okay. I'm sorry, Stu, if you're listening. Your wife is an Ohio State fan, which makes you an Ohio State fan for most of the time anyway. Let's be honest, okay? And you have no problem eating the chips, drinking the beer, partaking in all the hospitality that all of your Ohio State friends have given you. And you know what I'm talking about out there, Stu Holden. All right. So, okay, I stand corrected, but let's be honest. That Holden household, we know who runs that Holden household, and we know that it's Ohio State. What did you do, Mosse? What did you do? Anything interesting?
Not much on the television front. I did watch finally the Barcelona documentary that Take the Ball, Pass the Ball, but I'm going to save that for the Ask Alexi, because believe it or not, it actually ties into one of the Ask Alexi questions today. But
wow.
Beyond that, not much on the television front for me this week.
What did I have on the television front? I mentioned in the open, Sofia Coppola, one of the, rising, and I don't think she's great, and it's hard when your father's Francis Ford Coppola, but certainly a gifted filmmaker out there. She's got a new one on the Apple, what do you call it? The Apple Plus or whatever. I have it, but she's got a new movie out called On the Rocks, which stars Bill Murray and Rashida Jones. It is billed as a comedy. I watched it over the weekend. It's okay. It's not great. The comic moments in it are few and far between. And I guess it's just not in your face comedy, which is kind of what she does. And there's a whole lot more. The aesthetic of it is done with an obvious eye to being not arty, because that gives a negative connotation, but the way that it is shot, I think, is part of the appeal for a lot of people. I didn't find it that interesting a story, and I certainly didn't find it from a comedic standpoint that it gave me enough, especially when you have two great actors like that. So it's very understated. I still will recommend it. I think it's an interesting and it's not a waste of time type of movie, but I expected a little bit more. That was my my viewing. Anything that you saw or read or listened to out there?
Well, I have Borat on the queue here, ready to go. So I think maybe tonight I'll check that out.
Oh, you haven't watched it? You
I
haven't watched
it
Borat
yet.
I haven't either. I tell you what, we'll both watch it this week, and we will promise our listeners and viewers that they will get our review of the second Borat. I don't know what it's called, and it's got a really long name, but the second Borat movie that is out right now, and I think it's on Amazon Prime, right? So it's widely distributed in what distribution is in 2020 out there. So a lot of people can certainly watch that. All right, Mosse, anything else before we get this party started and light this candle?
That's it.
All right, let's do it. We're going to dive right in to the craziness that's happening over in Europe, and as it relates to a lot of American players. You know, I don't think that there has been a time, Mosse, correct me if I'm wrong, in the past where there has been more optimism and more curiosity as to what is happening when it comes to American players. And each and every week and or weekend, we are seemingly planning our viewing habits around these these multiple opportunities to see American players. And as we've said many, many times over the last couple of weeks, at some really, really big clubs. And this week did not disappoint. There were certainly plenty of them to sink our teeth into. Some people like Alex Dowd are going to watch Chelsea no matter what. There are other people that are fans of the player first and will watch Chelsea either begrudgingly if they follow another English team, or just watch Chelsea because someone like Christian Pulisic is playing there, and now that he's healthy, starting there. And that's okay. That's what this American soccer fanaticism and belief and growth is all about, is seeing some of these things and taking pride and being curious as to how ultimately these players, when they are playing at these big clubs, measure up. All right, Mosse. So let's start with the Champions League action and then kind of go into the weekend's action from a club perspective, because, you know, as we're seeing these players play at big clubs, they have their midweek action and some at these big clubs with Champions League and or Europa League, and then continuing on into the weekend. All right, Gio Reyna, which I think for a lot of people, notwithstanding how great Christian Pulisic is really something that people are focusing on now. Midweek Champions League with Dortmund. He did not start. Okay. Were you concerned? He came on, got an assist. Were you concerned, and should we be concerned that he didn't start, or is this just a rotation and it's okay? He's still well on his way to becoming a star.
Yeah, no concern at all. Just a rotation. He did come on at halftime when they were losing and provided an assist to Haaland, that combination again. But it wasn't enough for Dortmund, who lost 3-1 away to Lazio, a bad result for them. I mocked Raphael Honenstein for talking up Ciro Immobile facing Dortmund as one of the big storylines of this group stage, but it is at least worth a mention that Ciro Immobile is a striker who, when Lewandowski left Dortmund for Bayern in the summer of 2014, Ciro Immobile was the guy that Dortmund brought into great fanfare to replace Lewandowski. He failed miserably at that, spent one season at Dortmund, was a flop, then went back to Italy, and he's had all sorts of success with Lazio now the last couple of years. And so this was interesting to have him face Dortmund, and lo and behold, he scored, and Lazio get a big win, 3-1 over Gio Reyna and company. But Reyna, as we mentioned, did get an assist off the bench in that one.
Okay, so we're all good. We're all good with Reyna. All right, what about Christian Pulisic over there at Chelsea, Mosse? Are we okay with him? And he's healthy, which is a good thing. I mean, that's the first thing you always look to when it comes to Christian Pulisic.
Yeah, and that's it. He started Chelsea's home game against Sevilla, which ended 0-0. Wasn't a great performance by him or Chelsea, but still, you just want to see him get a nice run of games here and stay fit. So just in that sense, I would say it's a positive. And
he continues to be, I think, when we watched him this week, we'll get a little bit more into to later, but he continues to be, when he gets the ball, exciting. And I know we look at him obviously as an American, but I think even if you take that out, he has that special thing that when he gets the ball, his first thought, we've said it time and time again, but I think it bears repeating, his first thought is to go forward and to attack. And I think in a certain way, that's a lost art, skill, quality. And a lot of it is relative to the way the game is played right now. And you just don't find players like that consistently, as soon as they get it, boom, and they have the quickness and the speed and the technical ability to do those things. So that's important. Who else are we talking about? Tyler Adams. How about our friend Tyler Adams over there?
Came on as a sub in Leipzig's 2-0 win over Istanbul Başakşehir. So nice result for Leipzig there to start off the group stage.
Yeah, and so, at least these players are getting on the field. Obviously, you want them starting. I have said this before, and I want to say it again. As we get into, and we're going to talk more about Greg Berhalter and the national team in a little bit, I think that Tyler Adams has the potential, and again, these guys, if they stay healthy, to be as important and even more important as any of the other players. And when all is said and done, we may look at Tyler Adams, both from his actual play and his leadership capabilities and importance going forward, as being that player that he's the first player that you put on the field, and that without him on the field, the U.S. men's national team is going to suffer. But he has had some injuries. It's good that he's getting on the field, and I do think the way that RB Leipzig talks about him, it is in those glowing terms. Whenever you hear players and coaches talk about him, it's never, they don't couch anything. It's never a situation like we're seeing right now at Bayern Munich with who's the Canadian? Alphonso Davies. Where they're kind of saying, he's not quite at the level, and we've seen a regression here or there. There's none of that when it comes to Tyler Adams. I think his importance, I think, is beyond debate right now when it comes to where he's playing and where he's probably going to play. Who else, Mosse? Oh, Serginho Dest, right?
So lots to talk about with him, because we'll get to the Clasico shortly. But as far as the Champions League, he started at left back in Barcelona's 5-1 drubbing of Ferencváros and played well again, got high marks from the Barcelona media. So all good there for Serginho.
Yeah, and look, this is a whole even higher level, if you will, than what we've seen with Christian, what we've seen with even relative to Juventus. There is rarefied air, and then there is even more rarefied air. And so the fact that he is being called upon immediately, and the fact that he hasn't missed a beat. I mean, if you didn't know that he was new, you wouldn't know watching him out there. And that's great. Now that he's not being necessarily associated with the greatest Barcelona team, or with a Barcelona team that is just winning every single game, that's not great. But and we'll talk a little bit more, like you said, about the weekend. He's not being looked at right now as the problem or a step down. He is coming out of every situation where people are saying, "Yep, fits the bill, looks good." Ethan Horvath, the goalkeeper for Club Bruges. You call it Bruges, Mosse? How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, Bruges.
Okay, but there's other. I was watching something online earlier, and they were calling Brugge. I think somebody was calling it Brugge or something.
Interesting.
Like that. Whatever. A wonderful story for Ethan Horvath, who has gone through a difficult time as players go through, and he gets the start, he gets the win. Thoughts on that, Mosse?
Yeah, it was his first start in 13 months in September 2019. He started this game because Mignolet tested positive for coronavirus, and Horvath scored an own goal in the second half, but then bounced back, made some big saves late, and Bruges got a late winner. So 2-1 victory away to Zenit in my favorite city, St. Petersburg. And he was crying afterwards. His teammates were very happy for him. So as you know, I'm devoid of any emotion, but for somebody like you, that had to be something of a feel-good moment.
Exactly. I mean, you are a robot, and we know that. But for those of us that feel pain and love and everything in between, this was a moment to see the humanity. This was the moment to see the personality, and as you said, the emotion of a player. And we sometimes gloss over the injury part of it, or we make fun or sport of the injury part of it. And it can play not just on your physical being, but on your emotional being. And especially for some of these players that are going over in search of fame and fortune, and all sorts of different wild twists and turns can happen, and good and bad. And there's moments where you're sitting, I don't know, alone in an apartment in a strange city, in a strange culture, in a strange country, and you're trying to fit in, and you're trying to find your break, and it doesn't look like it's ever going to come. Now, I'm not saying that this is it, but you could see that this was a cathartic type of experience for this player who has been through a lot, to get that moment that we all crave as professional athletes, to be there, to star, to win the game, to be called on, and to step up in that moment. That's great. Now, this has nothing to do necessarily with the national team or anything like that. This just is an American player who took this less traveled pathway, and it has been rocky at times. And so I was happy, and you can't help but be happy unless you're a robot, for a player to experience that. Who knows if this changes, but this was a great moment for him. All right, some other stuff when it comes to
Let me just say very quickly on the coaching front with Americans. A bad result for Jesse Marsch. Salzburg drew 2-2 at home against Lokomotiv Moscow. And when you're in a group with Bayern and Atletico Madrid, if you have any visions of advancing, you need to collect the 6 points against Lokomotiv Moscow. So that wasn't great. And yeah, just to put a ribbon on the American thing, Tuesday, that first day of the Champions League group stage, it did become another occasion for Americans to revel in this growing presence at the top of the European game. And Greg Berhalter came out and said the ultimate measuring stick of a country's talent is how many players you have competing in the UEFA Champions League. Do you subscribe to that notion?
No, he's absolutely right. But the measuring stick is a perception stick. So he recognizes that that's where the credibility comes from. Okay. Not necessarily the performance. And we're going to talk about that a little later in the show, but he's absolutely right in that the perception and the credibility of who you are as an individual player and who you are as a soccer playing nation often is directly related to the number of players that you have playing in Champions League. So I get it. And so he's going to trumpet that because it makes American soccer look better. It makes the individual players look better and of higher value. Whether that's the case or not, actually, it's irrelevant whether it's the case or not until they actually get on the field for the national team. But as far as their value and then that perceived quality and then that change of perception and a much more positive type of perception, he's absolutely right in saying that you need that and you want that, because that's changes hearts and minds, not just domestically, but internationally. What else, Mosse?
Well, and then otherwise in the Champions League, stepping away from the Americans a little bit, some results that caught my eye. Real Madrid lost at home to Shakhtar. The story here is that Zidane had one eye on the Clasico, so he left Benzema on the bench, and Sergio Ramos missed the game due to injury. And you take those two guys out, and it's a totally different team. It was a very toothless attack. Jovic is a disaster, and then at the back, they were a mess without Ramos. Militao and Varane both struggled. And so Shakhtar, who were missing loads of guys, had their way with Real Madrid in the first half. They were up 3-0 at the break. Then Zidane brings on Benzema, he brings on Vinicius, and Real Madrid staged something of a rally in the second half. They get it to 3-2. They actually scored a late equalizer of Valverde, but it was ruled out correctly for offsides. So a bad result here to start out the group stage for Real Madrid. And then
well, hold on. So are you absolving Zidane for thinking ahead, or I mean, is that what Real Madrid is in 2020? Two players out, Benzema and Sergio Ramos, and yes, they're great players, absolutely. But this is one of the great teams in the world. They can't afford to have two players out.
No, you're right. It speaks to the lack of depth in certain areas. And there was a debate in the Madrid media for a couple of days. There's saying, wait a minute, the Shakhtar game, that's one of 6. The Barcelona game, as big as it is one of 38. And why this early in the season are you prioritizing a league game over a Champions League group game? So
he thought they were going to roll over him. I mean, that's what honestly, that's what it is. And I get it. I mean, you're Real Madrid and this is Shakhtar. And you know, that's a little flip, but the reality. And by the way, like you mentioned, 10 of their players are out with COVID, and you know, almost the entire starting lineup, if you will. So I I don't want to absolve him because you're the Real Madrid coach, but I get why you would look at this as an opportunity playing at home where we're going to throw out a team and we're going to be competitive and we're going to be better on the day. And then it just all went to hell in a handbasket.
And then terrific result from Manchester United. They win 2-1 away to PSG and a fully deserved 3 points. They created the better chances throughout this game, especially those last 20, 25 minutes. You would have thought PSG would be the team on the front foot pushing for a winner. Instead, it was United creating great chances. Keylor Navas stood in his head, but finally he couldn't stop Marcus Rashford's shot, a beautiful goal by Rashford. And speaking of goalkeepers, by the way, De Gea had kind of a turn back the clock performance to his glory days because he made a save on Mbappe early in the second half, which was phenomenal. Great play by Mbappe cutting in from the left. He twisted his way past like 3 United defenders and then this curving shot that you would have thought was going to be a goal. And then De Gea just somehow got his hand on it. So some great goalkeeping in this game.
Well, you remember there was a period there with De Gea where we were saying at the end of the season and during the entire season, we were trying to calculate how many points he single-handedly secured and saved for the team and how bad it possibly could have been. And then it all went off the rails for him. So that, and like you said, that save there, you were back to the time where we said, if we don't have that goalkeeper there, we're not getting those points. But the ultimate question then is Manchester United actually a good team? Is Ole the answer? I mean, we keep going back and forth. And does this result now change the way that you look at him or you look at this team?
Yeah, he has almost, dare I say, a Zidane-esque knack for whenever the criticism is growing to pull like a great result rabbit out of the hat. And yeah, he sort of did that here. And so now he's kind of solidified himself again. Yeah, I like him. I like this team. I was high on United coming into the season and disappointed in what I'd seen so far. But so I still think there's the makings of a really good team there. And this was certainly a terrific start to the group stage for them. They had, remember, this was something of a revenge game for PSG. United had knocked them out a couple years ago by winning a second leg in Paris with Marcus Rashford scoring a late penalty. And what happens here? United win again with a late Rashford goal. So they've really got PSG's number now. So
you mentioned a little earlier about Christian Pulisic and Chelsea and Sevilla. Is that who is that good for? 0-0.
Sevilla came out of that game feeling really good about themselves.
Okay.
You know, they win the Europa League last season, but you know, the Champions League, it's a step up in class, and they've had 2 acid tests here to show that they're really capable of competing against the elite. That UEFA Super Cup against Bayern, they acquitted themselves very well there. They lost in extra time, and then they go away to Chelsea match day 1 and probably were the better team in this game and get out of there with a point. So I think Sevilla really feel good about themselves coming out of this game. And then the other game I did want to highlight is Bayern, which I watched this game from start to finish. They beat Atletico Madrid 4-0. And believe me when I tell you this, Atletico Madrid did not play badly. They actually played pretty well. Bayern were just that good. And they didn't have Sane. They didn't have Gnabry. Lewandowski didn't score. And still, they pummel Atletico Madrid 4-0. It was 2 by Coman, 1 by Goretzka, other by Tolisso. Each goal was prettier than the next. They could have had more. And this was the sort of performance that you just take a step back and you're just, wow, this team is just on a different level.
That is depth at a super club, okay? That's what Real Madrid should be able to do, but they can't do. Good God. All right, so they played well, but still got their ass handed to. All right.
Correct.
Good. All right. Good. Well, that's what I mean.
Which is almost worse if you think about it.
So if you had to right now, okay, take all of the Mosse household money that you have, right, and put it on a team, would you put it on Bayern Munich right now to win Champions League again?
Yeah, I had Bayern and Liverpool as being sort of a cut above everybody else. Okay. And then the Van Dijk injury happens. So now I got to see Liverpool without Van Dijk. I might have to like drop them down a level and leave Bayern up there all alone on top.
Is there a player on Bayern Munich that is Van Dijk-esque in that they can't live without him and your perception of that team completely changes without them?
It would be Lewandowski, yeah.
Really?
With all due respect to Choupo-Moting, I think if they were to lose Lewandowski for the season, they would not win the Champions League.
You're dripping with sarcasm when you say these things. It's brutal. Okay, so let's finish it up with this. You know how we love to talk about Pep, and sometimes it has nothing to do. Man City, Porto, they got the result 3-1, but explain to me all the craziness that was going on the sideline, and then even trickled out to after between the coaches, and the animosity and the anger and the irritation and the angst between these coaches after the game.
Yeah, Pep got into it with the Porto coach, Sergio Conceição. Evidently, the Porto,
I never would have pronounced it
like Pep, and the whole City bench and the substitutes were just chirping at the referee the whole game and working the refs. And he actually thought like they were getting all the calls. So what are they complaining about? And so he went after Pep a little bit after the game. Pep just in general I continue to feel like this was maybe one season too many with Pep, and he just wears on you, and he just seems very irritated himself and just picking fights with everybody. So, this occurs in the context of all that. Okay.
In this echelon that we're kind of talking about right now, when it comes to teams, where is Man City? It seems that they've fallen, and it's a precipitous type of fall right now. And maybe that's part of what the irritation is with Pep, is he sees the writing on the wall, and he sees what's going on right now, and taking it out on poor little Sergio Conceição. I can't pronounce it.
I'm just getting a bad vibe off City. And of course, now you have both strikers, Aguero and Jesus, battling fitness issues early on this season. So that's a problem. So, and just overall, I don't see this being the season where they break through in the Champions League. I actually wouldn't list them amongst my handful of top contenders to win it.
Would you bet that Pep is there next year?
Yeah, I could see this being the final season. I really could.
Wow.
And by the way, just to spin it forward quickly, there's a real great showdown this week in the Champions League, Juventus-Barcelona. But the latest I've read is that Ronaldo, who missed this past weekend's game because of testing positive for COVID, he's now going to get retested. There's a standard test 24 hours before each game, and then the result of that test will determine his availability, which obviously we're all hoping he plays, because you then get another Ronaldo-Messi showdown.
Ooh. That'll be good. All right, so let's spin it to the weekend and hit on some games that stood out. Obviously, it was a weekend for El Clasico. What were your thoughts on this El Clasico that is not played in front of anybody? And was it as exciting to you as it can't be as exciting as the things in the past? But was it still something to be seen?
Yeah, I thought it was actually a terrific first half, and then the game kind of petered out in the second half. Real Madrid was clearly the better team, deserved the 3 points on balance of play, but the game-winning goal did come about due to a very contested penalty upon a VAR review. Still a lot of controversy surrounding this decision. What did you make of it? The penalty awarded on the shirt tug, Longley pulling Sergio Ramos down.
It's a penalty, and look. If I go out on the 405, Mosse, all right. Actually, I was on the 405 this morning. Okay, I had to go get COVID tested, and I'll be honest with you, Mosse. I broke the speed limit. I went over 55 miles an hour. There were people all over flying past me. Okay, and if I had gotten pulled over by a policeman, and I rolled down the window and I said, "But officer, everybody else was speeding." Okay. That's not an excuse. I'm still getting a ticket and I still broke the law. It's the same thing. Okay. If you grab somebody's jersey, and yes, I know you could find 10 examples of it, but buyer beware. Okay. If you are a player and you are playing in 2020 with VAR, okay, you know the risk. And you want to take that risk? Fine. When you get dinged, you don't get to point to everybody else and say, yeah, but they were doing the same thing. That didn't work for my mom. That didn't work for the policeman. And it's not going to work here for VAR. It's a penalty. Okay. Once again, I know you guys love when I scream and yell about you can't be a little pregnant. Well, you can't be a little pregnant. Grab this shirt. Okay. Now, did Sergio Ramos embellish? Yeah. But we've talked about this before. Sometimes you got to cry a little. Sometimes you have to point, hey, look, I am being victimized here. Make sure that you recognize what is happening right here. This person is breaking the laws of the game. And you got to, so I had no problem with the entire play. And I certainly don't have any problem with the call. Do you, Mosse?
No, I mean, Koeman did go down the path that you mentioned, saying that, oh, this happens in virtually every cross, every corner into the box, and it's completely arbitrary. why they call it sometimes and not others. And that argument was strengthened a bit if you watch the Manchester United-Chelsea game immediately afterwards. There was a play in the first half where Harry Maguire basically, like bear hugged Aspilicueta in the box, and somehow that's not a penalty, and the Real Madrid play is. So a lot of people were sort of juxtaposing those plays against each other. The one thing I will say, though, is whatever you think of this decision, the behavior of the Barcelona media in the aftermath has been absolutely disgraceful. They are concocting this whole conspiracy theory that the referee is a Real Madrid fan, even going to the lengths of like interviewing his neighbors and his friends. And they've uncovered the fact that this referee's father once started a Madrid supporters club, and splashing this on the front pages like this is some giant conspiracy. And all it takes is one crazy idiot fan to read that and go do something stupid. I mean, you got to be careful with that stuff. I mean, my God, whether you agree or disagree with the decision, don't start reading bad faith into people. I mean, I just, to me, that's very, very off-putting behavior.
Wow. But not surprising. All right. So, but when it comes to a couple of things, good news from American perspective, Sergiño Dest started the game, played the entire game. And as I mentioned before, he may have lost the battle, but he's winning the war in that he came out not smelling like a rose, but there was nobody that pointed to anything that he did, okay, that was negative other than being on the losing side. And he himself after the game actually said that, I'm pissed that we lost, and that's not something I want to do, which is great. But his actual individual performance was looked at as a bright spot. So that's great. That's great for him. First off, that he's on the field. Second off, that when he's on the field, even in a losing effort, people recognize that this is something to build on right there. Am I framing that correctly as far as the way I saw it and the way that most people saw it?
Agree 100%. Thought he had an excellent game, completely shut down Vinicius, and showed some skill going forward. So yeah, the Barcelona media remains very high on him. I think rightly so. He's off to a great start there. But beyond that, Koeman, a couple of things. I didn't like him playing Coutinho out on the left. I felt like he got kind of lost there. He's had success this season playing more centrally. I also thought Messi was having to drop too far back to try to create things. And so there are some things tactically I didn't love with Barcelona there. And then, boy, he waited quite a long time to make the subs. He brought on three guys all at once, including Griezmann and Dembele, who they came on at the same time. But I actually think Griezmann's situation has deteriorated to the point where Dembele is probably ahead of him in the reclamation project pecking order. I think Koeman now feels like Dembele is more recoverable than Griezmann even. So, yeah, Antoine Griezmann's situation there just goes from bad to worse.
So we've talked so much about the situation with Messi over the summer, and if this is just a fait accompli and that he's just going to play out this year and then go someplace else. And we also talk about reclamation project, the onus and the responsibility on Barcelona and obviously Koeman to create a situation where next summer, when Messi is making this decision, that he actually potentially wants to continue on. But this is not good, Mosse, in terms of that part of the equation right now. You're sitting in the middle of the table. It does not look good. He did not look particularly good. He phased out. Certainly had some individual moments because he's Messi and he's able to do that. But has he already checked out? And in a way, has Barcelona already checked out on him?
Yeah, he looked very frustrated. As you mentioned, he had a pretty good first half, played a beautiful ball over the top to Jordi Alba on the goal. Alba then squared it across for Fati and then had a couple of other nice moves. There was one play I have to highlight it. I know goalkeepers have been kind of a big theme for me today. In the first half, where a ball was floated to him in the box, he chested it down, then skipped past Sergio Ramos, and then
the right foot
footed it with his right foot. And boy, when he let it go, you thought this is definitely a goal. And Courtois somehow stuck his paw at the perfect time. It was an incredible save by Courtois. And by the way, Neto, the Brazilian who's filling in for Ter Stegen, had a very good game at the other end, made some great saves too. So goalkeeping, very good this weekend. But yeah, first half pretty good for Messi, but boy, definitely faded out of the game second half. And just his body language in the second half and immediately after the final whistle, I mean, again, he still does not look happy there. You felt like he was already like concocting another burofax in his head and what the next one is going to be, because certainly this start to the season has not really sort of lifted his spirits at all.
All right, so we talked about Juventus and not having Cristiano Ronaldo, and who knows what's going to happen this week. We also talked about Americans and Weston McKennie, who has not found the field yet, and didn't again this weekend when it comes to the 1-1 result that Juventus had with Verona. Is this a problem for Weston McKennie right now, or is this just a natural type of progression that we kind of talked about, where he was given that opportunity early? There was plenty of other quality and talent that was waiting in the wings, either injured or just coming back into form, that now we are starting to see the real Juventus. He might not be as used as often as we would certainly like from an American perspective, but this is reality kind of setting in.
Yeah, boy, it's rough because he had that impressive debut. Then he has one bad game against Roma, and then obviously that testing positive for coronavirus didn't help. But you do already get the sense that he's slipping down the pecking order there. Now, as I mentioned, they have Barcelona, big game coming this midweek, and we'll see if he gets on the field there. But yeah, it's a tad concerning. It's early. I wouldn't go crazy over it, but. And then Juve in general, they draw 1-1 against Verona, and they've won just 2 of their first 5 Serie A games. So there's a lot of the positive feeling around Pirlo. Everybody wants this to work out, so they're going to cut him some slack. But I have to say, it's not a great start to the season for Juventus. Milan play Roma today. We're taping this on a Monday, and so they're looking to continue their perfect start to the season. They're in first place in Serie A right now, so Juve early on here already has some catching up to do.
Hey, listen. It doesn't matter whether you're a legend and have great hair. If you coach Juve and you can't find a way to at least win the Scudetto, then you got problems. You got problems. All right, finish it up. Did anything pique your interest in terms of EPL action this weekend? We saw Everton get their first loss. We saw this defensive struggle between Manchester United and Chelsea. Anything that was exciting to you when it comes to EPL?
I wouldn't call it exciting, but the United-Chelsea game was interesting. It ended 0-0. I think both managers are okay with that result, particularly Frank Lampard. I know they've had back-to-back 0-0 draws here, but I think he feels pretty confident that the attack will come good. The big question for Chelsea is defensively, and you're starting to see some positive signs there. Mendy had a very good game, made a couple of great saves on Rashford, a kick save in the first half, and then a diving save late in the game. He did have one blooperish moment in the first half where he almost passed the ball into his own net, but that one play notwithstanding, Mendy was terrific. I thought Thiago Silva had a very good game. So all of a sudden, you're starting to see the makings of actually a decent Chelsea back line there, which if they can defend with what they have going forward, they're going to be tough to beat. And you mentioned Pulisic earlier. I thought he actually had a pretty good game here, was active, did some things. So, so that was my big takeaway there. What did you glean from this one?
Not much. Let
me just close it up with Bundesliga. Bayern 5-0 over Frankfurt. Lewandowski with a hat trick. He has 10 in 5 Bundesliga games this season, off to an incredible start. And then Dortmund thumped Schalke 3-0. This is a great rivalry, but right now these two teams aren't boxing in the same weight class. Reina did start this game. Haaland, surprise, got one of the 3 goals. And yeah, it's funny. We talked about our favorite derbies last weekend. Although, as was pointed out to us by a guy named Fish on Twitter, we kind of took some liberties with the term derby. It's supposed to mean 2 teams in the same city, and we immediately went to USA, Mexico, Barcelona, Real Madrid. We just started talking about great rivalries in general, so we should acknowledge that. But I forgot what English paper was. They did this week some ranking of the greatest rivalries in club football, and Dortmund Schalke was very high up there. So that rivalry still has some cachet, but right now those 2 teams are not even on the same level, and Dortmund blew them away.
All right, I'm gonna proclaim that if you call it derby, then it has to be in the same city. But if you call it derby, it doesn't have to be in the same city. So that's what we're going to go with. All right, listen, we're going to come back with some MLS roundup action, because there was all sorts of stuff going on there, but really good stuff happening over in Europe when it comes to American players, and we hope to see more of that going forward. Mosse, anything before we head off?
That's it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Like I said, coming back with some MLS roundup action. All right, don't go away. Moving on. Okay, we're back. MLS roundup. All sorts of stuff happening in MLS as we get down to the nitty gritty, as we get down to the end of what has been a very interesting and challenging season. We are we are faced with the fact that we are going to end this regular season. And let's be honest, it is going to be a regular season unlike anything else that we've ever seen, with the MLS's bubble, MLS's back bubble that we saw down in Orlando mid-tournament, with the start of play with crowd and the rest of the season for the most part without crowds. And then what is not announced yet, but it's just a matter of time before this gets announced, where there are going to be teams with far few games played. And so therefore, either all or some of the teams and conferences are going to go to points per game. But we're coming down, and everybody is doing this dance that we do at the end of even a regular season and a regular normal season, where you have this musical chairs type of aspect, people moving up, down, and everywhere in between, trying to secure those precious playoff spots. And there's a lot of them out there, but at some point this music is going to stop, and there will be some teams left without any seats. We did have El Trafico, which is back again. It's hard talking about any of these big rivalries without fans in the stands, but LAFC, which is on the ascension, I guess you would call it, in the way that they have gone against their inner city, and I'm using that term loosely. I know it's down in Carson, but their inner city rival, LA Galaxy, hosting the LA Galaxy. And LA Galaxy is in shambles. It is a mess. There was a moment, a brief moment of glory in the middle of this year when we thought things had turned and they were heading in the right direction, but that was fleeting. And it is gone, and not only gone, but LA Galaxy found themselves in last place coming into this game and proceeded to lay another egg and change the game immediately with a red card in the first half. LAFC goes on to not only win, but also welcome back last year's MVP, who's been out most of the season, in Carlos Vela, who then proceeds to score a goal. They win 2-0, take the 3 points against a hapless Los Angeles Galaxy. Also a Los Angeles Galaxy without Chicharito, yet again. Evidently he pulled a hammy and was not even available to play. So this is good days and good news if you are an LAFC fan, and this is just continued bad news and bad days for the LA Galaxy right now, which we'll talk about in a second. But just thoughts on the game first before we go to some of the off the field situation. Was
the ball in or out?
All right. So for those that didn't see it, this was a game where 11 versus 11, it was relatively equal. The red card comes, and LA Galaxy immediately looks at the situation and says, all right, we're going to pack it in. The interesting part about that red card was initially the call was made for a penalty in the box, or a foul in the box, a penalty awarded. And because it was deemed that the defender was at least making an attempt on the ball, with the way the rules and laws are right now, it was given a yellow card. After VAR looked at the play, they went back and they said, no, this foul actually occurred outside the box. And if it happens outside the box, then that rule doesn't apply about the triple jeopardy type of thing. And so the red card was awarded in that moment. Actually, VAR in that instance worked perfectly. Got it right. It was efficient. It was clear. Everybody understood what was going on. And it was VAR at its best. Okay. But that, like I said, it did change the game. And from then on, it was just LAFC trying to break down the LA Galaxy. The goal that you're talking about and the controversy around it was actually one of the moments where the Galaxy got stretched. The ball appeared to go over the end line of LAFC, which would have resulted in a Los Angeles Galaxy corner. One of the few times that the Galaxy was actually in LAFC's end. The call was not made by the AR or the referee in that moment. And LAFC, in that attacking phase, went down to the other end of the field, all in a matter of seconds, scored their goal, took the lead. Everyone went crazy. The play was reviewed from a television perspective. And this is where people that say we shouldn't have VAR. Television immediately starts showing all of the views that they have. And when you look at it, just to the naked eye, you can say, you could certainly make the argument that the ball looked like it was over the line, which would therefore negate that goal from a VAR perspective. However, when the referees looked and the VAR got involved, they decided that no, there was not enough evidence to clearly show that that ball was over the line, and everybody lost their mind. I didn't, okay, because I believe in science, and I believe in geometry and physics, and I believe that a ball is a sphere. And just because the ball looks like it is over the line doesn't mean that the entire ball is over the line. And until we actually have a camera that shows the exact lineup of the line, it's impossible to know. In the same way that we have the camera on the actual goal line for goals, if you extended it out, that's what we would have needed in that instance to clearly say that that ball was over. And I know at times we have said a ball is over. And we have used the video, even though it's not on the line, to say the ball is over. And that's where that subjective type of decision comes from. But if this game was closer, if this game, and I know it shouldn't matter, but it does, all right? If this game was closer, I think the Galaxy folks, and probably even myself, would be screaming more for answers and feeling much more hard done in this situation. But this was inches. I can justify what happened in that moment from a officiating and VAR perspective, and so I'm fine with this situation happening. What did you think, Mosse?
Yeah, I've talked about this in the context of goal line technology. It's tough because it does often betray the naked eye, but this is one area where people have generally agreed to trust the science, and you don't see as much controversy with this type of decision as you see with offsides. For whatever reason, you know, I've often referenced the Manchester City-Liverpool game a couple of seasons ago that effectively decided the Premier League title, where Liverpool had a shot that to the naked eye seemed like it was definitely a goal. And then the goal line technology said, no, the ball didn't completely cross the line. And Liverpool fans bemoan how close they came, but nobody argued that if that's what goal line technology said, that's what it said. And so, yeah, in these types of decisions, for whatever reason, seems like people have decided to trust the science. So, yeah, I guess I have to go with it. If they said it didn't completely cross the line, then it didn't.
Well, all of this leaves the Los Angeles Galaxy bitter and in no better position than actually a worse position in terms of making the playoffs than they were before this game. You know, we talked earlier about, in earlier podcasts about how to view 2020 and the different ways that different teams and people view it, and how much credence to give it, and how much responsibility and consequence to give to what happens in 2020, which is why I said you're going to be given a leash and you're going to be given the benefit of the doubt, and you will be let off much more and forgiven much more in 2020 than in previous situations and years because of the unique aspect of it. So each club has to decide how much is 2020 worth. Someone like Atlanta decided that it's not good enough, even if it happens in 2020. And, you know, they got rid of their coach, and they certainly haven't continued to do well. And some of it will be forgiven. The Los Angeles Galaxy has to decide how much of this failure is simply relative to the personnel that they have, and how much is relative to, you know, just the fates and the 2020 gods conspiring. And I don't know what their calculus is going to be. You have Chris Klein, you have Dennis DeClosa, you have Jovan Karofsky, you have Dan Beckerman, who's the head of AEG and is making a decision on all of those people. And then obviously you have Guillermo Barros-Schelotto right now. I don't see this sustainable in terms of Guillermo Barros-Schelotto. If the LA Galaxy goes on, doesn't make the playoffs, and just sputters out here at the end, which it looks like it's going to happen, then I don't see him back next year. the question from a Galaxy perspective is, do they have the right personnel making those decisions for who next is going to be in charge? Or is it a bigger type of responsibility? And is 2020 not as, or as important as any other year, and therefore the ramifications of it are going to be relative to any other year? I don't know what that's going to happen, but this is not good enough. This is not good enough for the Los Angeles Galaxy. And look, I was in charge when the Galaxy sucked too. All right. And I knew at the moment that it wasn't good enough. And obviously myself and others, you know, we paid the price, but we knew what the Galaxy was going in. We knew the expectations, we knew the history, and we knew that if you don't live up to it, okay, you're not going to be there. And so I'll be really interested to see if it goes beyond Guillermo Barros Schelotto in terms of the changes that are made next year. I don't want people to lose their jobs. I don't get excited about it. I know it's sport out there, and these are human beings with families and kids and livelihoods and all of that. But this is the Los Angeles Galaxy, okay? And it has built itself, as I've said time and time again over the last 24 years, as being one, if not the super club of Major League Soccer. And it's not living up to that. And maybe it wants to go in a different direction, but fine. But that's not the Galaxy that I know. Mosse, thoughts?
One note, Palmeiras in Brazil are currently searching for a new manager, and Guillermo Barros Schelotto has been mentioned as a possibility. He still has cachet in South America despite his Galaxy struggles because of what he did at Boca. And Palmeiras are scrambling a little bit right now because their top choice, Miguel Ramirez, turned them down. So Schelotto's been mentioned. Also another former Argentinian player, Gabriel Hines. But I don't know. Palmeiras might do the Galaxy a favor here. If another club comes in for him and Schelotto decides, yeah, maybe I should go back to South American football, and he decides to take the job, I don't think the Galaxy would be shedding any tears. It would, you know, they wouldn't have to fire him, and they would be able to make a change that they probably are going to have to make anyway.
It's a bad fit, and I get no sense of optimism or confidence or leadership, or I think the most important word is personality. And look, this has nothing to do with language or anything like that. I mean, one of the biggest personalities we've had in Major League Soccer was Tata Martino. Okay. But your team reflects off of the leadership and reflects off of that personality. And I can't get a read on him at all. There's nothing there that makes me want to run through a wall. And look, I'm not a player, so I don't have to do that for him. But you know, every good team, I think, has a leader, and people lead in different ways. I'm not talking about rah-rah or screaming and yelling or anything like that. But at no time under Guillermo Barros Schelotto have I looked at that leadership and have I said, you know what? I might not agree with everything. That's okay if I don't agree. But that's someone that I would fight for. Or that's someone that has a plan. Or that is someone that is interesting. That is somebody who is going to make others believe in what he is selling. And, you know, that's not good for any team. And it's certainly not good, as I said, for the Los Angeles Galaxy. And, you know, so we're at a point right now in 2020 where the Los Angeles Galaxy, unless something ridiculous happens, is going to fizzle out spectacularly. And Atlanta United, the other quote unquote super club out there, is also going to fizzle out. And they made a change earlier on the season. And I think they will figure out once again what that leadership looks like, and if they continue on with that leadership. And I'm not talking just about the coach. I'm talking about the leadership in terms of the decisions that are made. You know, you have Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra there, and decide if that is to continue or if they make wholesale type of changes off the field. And then obviously that coach, I think that coaching decision is going to be as important as the Los Angeles Galaxy coaching decision. But Atlanta just hasn't gotten together at all. And yes, you can blame the fact that the greatest goal scorer in Major League Soccer in Joseph Martinez hasn't been there. I get it, but that can't be all of it right now. We have, before we get to decision day, Did you see any of the Miami-Orlando game, Mosse?
I did not.
Okay, so Miami hosting Orlando. We don't have a name for this. I just got done talking about El Trafico, and we still don't have a real good type of name. We've dropped the ball, all right, when it comes to American soccer, that we have had this in the palm of our hand, and we still have yet to give it a name that sticks. They might have one, but I don't know it. And so therefore, not that I am the be-all and end-all, but if I don't know it, then it hasn't stuck the way El Trafico has. So find a name, find something good. It's only going to get bigger and better as we go along. It was, Miami finding a way to beat Orlando. And this isn't just any Orlando team. This is Orlando 2020. This is a good, if not great, team in Major League Soccer, and one that's been on a roll. And in terms of consecutive results for Orlando, this was a huge win for Miami. It puts them well in contention of making the playoffs, and that would be them making the playoffs along with Nashville in the first year. And I know it's 2020, but still that's an accomplishment no matter what. But this situation, oh, by the way, it also pointed out the completely different scenarios that exist when it comes to our country and how we are dealing with groups and spectators and social type of settings. There was what amounted to an entire supporters section of fans in Miami, shirts off, screaming and yelling, singing, throwing beers all over the place. It was as if they were living in an alternate universe. And I know it's Florida, so sometimes it is an alternate universe, but it was amazing to see. And they got to stick it out and see their team not just win, but win against their interstate rival in a huge 3 points for Miami. Leandro Gonzalez Perez. Talk about Orlando and some of the players that they have lost and some of the decisions that they've made, with regards to players that were there in the good times. He finds his way, set piece, gets the win at the end. So huge result for them. Philadelphia. All right. I'll end it there, and we could talk about every single game, but we're not going to talk about every single game. But I do want to mention Philadelphia right now, going into, well, what would be Toronto, but since Toronto is playing their home games in Connecticut at Rentschler, going in, well, they didn't go to Rentschler, excuse me, in Philadelphia, just absolutely decimating Toronto FC. And decimating, yes, not a full strength Toronto FC, but still 5-0. Philadelphia, this is as good as the Philadelphia Union has looked in their entire history. And that's a great thing. It's a great thing for them, and it's a great thing for us because we get to see a dynamic, exciting, entertaining type of Philadelphia Union team that right now is on the verge of potentially winning the Supporters Shield, which gets us to the Supporters Shield. We mentioned it last week. Surprise, surprise. The Supporters Shield is now being awarded after the craziness and the back and forth. Our long national nightmare, international nightmare when it comes to Canada, is now over, and the battle for the asterisk is back on, and you will be given a plate and recognized and given your praise and your love that you so obviously need, whoever that is, Toronto FC, Philadelphia Union, or anybody else that's vying for it. So that's back on. Philadelphia, very, very good. I look forward to seeing what they do because, and now this gets into decision day. We are at this point, as I said, where everybody's jockeying for a chair, and the thought of the renewed opportunity that comes in the playoffs and how some teams will look at what they have done and be excited and, will use it to go on to better things. And others will actually start thinking, what if we've peaked? What if this is as good as it gets? Because when all is said and done, people remember MLS Cup. They don't remember Supporters Shield. They don't remember what you did in the regular season. They remember if you are there at the end, holding that MLS Cup up with the confetti coming down. And that's what is written in the history books. And that is what is ultimately remembered. And what you have done in the regular season gets you an advantage in the postseason, but it doesn't win it, which is why only 7 of the 24 teams that have won Supporter Shield have then gone on and won MLS Cup. And if you're Philadelphia right now and you're thinking, man, what can we parlay this into a performance in the playoffs? And what if we don't? Will it all have been for naught? And you'll talk about the Supporter Shield, whatever we're even with the asterisk that we call it. But this is where it really gets interesting. And as I said, I would expect, even maybe before we're even off of, even when we get done recording this, and maybe by the time you're listening to this or watching this, that point per game type of scenario will have come into play. And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be fair. It's just going to be 2020. And as we've said all along, just MLS trying to make the best of a crap situation. And everyone's going to scream, and people will not be happy